right in the heartland of America, centuries before the first steel skyscrapers ever touched the clouds, there was another kind of metropolis, a city that dominated the landscape, built not from steel and glass, but from earth, from wood, and from sheer human will. At its peak, this civilization was bigger, more populous than London, and then it was gone. Today, we're conducting an engineering autopsy on this lost megacity, Cahokia, to unlock the secrets of its incredible construction, its power, and its sudden, baffling disappearance.
First, I want you to completely forget the timeline of American history you learned in school. We have to go way back. The year is 1250 AD. Over in Europe, the great Gothic cathedrals are still being built. And right here in the lush, fertile plain of the Mississippi River, an entire civilization is at its absolute zenith.
And when I say zenith, I am not exaggerating. Cahokia was enormous, sprawling over 6 square miles. To give you some perspective, London at this exact same time was smaller. This wasn't some quiet village, this was a true, ancient city, the largest north of what is now Mexico. At its height, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people called the city home. Now, just stop and think about the logistics of that for a second. A city this large needs incredible urban planning, a stable food supply from the surrounding lowlands, and a really complex social structure just to keep things from falling apart. This wasn't just a settlement, it was a masterpiece of social engineering. And that right there, that's the central mystery, isn't it? A city of this scale, this sophistication, a true monument to human ingenuity. And yet, it's like a ghost in our own history. Why? Well, to find the answers, we have to look at the evidence left behind, the very bones of the city itself. So let's begin the investigation.
Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 6 parts. First, we'll look at why this city really shouldn't even exist where it did. Then we'll deconstruct its most incredible piece of engineering. After that, we'll see how they aligned their world with the cosmos, investigate the strange mystery of their Great Wall, analyze the clues behind the city's collapse, and finally, follow the ghosts they left behind on the Mississippi.
Our investigation has to start with the most staggering piece of evidence on the entire landscape, the city's massive centerpiece, a structure we call Monk's Mound. But honestly, calling it a mound is a huge understatement. This was an earthen skyscraper. To build just this one structure, the people of Cahokia moved more than 600,000 cubic meters of earth. Think about that. And get this, they did it all without animals to pull carts, without the wheel, and without any metal tools. Just human labor. The real genius, though, is in how they built it. See, this wasn't just a matter of piling up dirt. It was an absolutely brilliant feat of geotechnical engineering. They used this strategic layering method. Millions of individual basket loads of earth, all carried by hand, were carefully arranged in alternating layers of permeable soil and dense, sticky clay. This created a kind of internal drainage system, basically waterproofing the core of the mound and stopping this 100-foot-tall structure from just collapsing into a giant mud puddle, which it absolutely should have done on this volatile floodplain. To really get a sense of the scale here, let's put it up against one of the most famous structures in human history. The base of Monk's Mound covers over 14 acres. That means its physical footprint on the ground is bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza's. Let that sink in. This was a world-class monument, sitting right in the middle of Illinois. But the engineering brilliance of Cahokia wasn't just pointed down at the earth. The next piece of our puzzle shows that they were also looking up, aligning their entire world with the movements of the cosmos. There's a whole field of study for this. It's called archaeoastronomy. And at Cahokia, researchers found something truly incredible, a series of huge timber circles that have been nicknamed woodhenge. And just like its famous namesake in England, Woodhenge was basically a giant, highly accurate solar clock. If you were standing at the central observation post, the sunrise on the key days of the year, the solstices and the equinoxes, would line up perfectly with these massive, specific wooden posts around the edge of the circle. This wasn't just for show. This dictated their entire lives, when to plant crops, when to harvest, when to hold their most important ceremonies. And on the fall equinox, the view must have been just breathtaking. The sun would rise directly over the peak of Monk's Mound. As one observer put it, it looked like the mound giving birth to the sun.
All right, now we have to turn to a darker, much more intimidating feature of the city, a massive wooden wall, a palisade, that was built around the sacred central heart of the city. But the fact that it even exists raises some really troubling questions about what life was really like in this place. And here's the real puzzle. The archaeology shows this wall was not part of the original design. It was added much later, and when they built it, they actually cut right through existing neighborhoods, forcing people out. This points to some kind of dramatic and probably violent shift in their society. So what was it for? Defense against enemies from the outside? Or was it for social control, a way for the elites to wall themselves off from everyone else? I mean, the sheer scale of this wall is hard to wrap your head around. It was 2 miles long, 15 feet high, and built from tens of thousands of huge logs. It was also a serious fortress, fortified with these projecting watchtowers or bastions that were engineered to give archers perfect, clear shots at anyone approaching. And what's really incredible is that they had to rebuild the whole thing at least 3 separate times. This tells us one thing for sure. This society was under intense, sustained pressure. All of this brings us to the final chapter in our forensic investigation, the death of the city. After centuries of incredible growth, around 1200 AD, this great metropolis started to decline, and by the late 1300s, it was a ghost town. The big question is, what killed Cahokia? For a long, long time, the simplest theory was the one most people went with: climate change. The story went that a huge drought hit the area, the crops failed, and the civilization just collapsed. It's a very neat, clean explanation. Yeah, but the problem is that simple, clean theory is almost certainly wrong. While the climate might have been a factor, the evidence we find in the ground and in the environment points to a much messier, more complicated reality. It wasn't one single disaster, but a perfect storm of cascading failures. What we're looking at here is a portrait of a very fragile ecosystem being pushed past its breaking point. All that massive deforestation, for construction, for firewood, for those huge palisades, it stripped the landscape bare. That led to resource depletion and catastrophic erosion and flooding. The walls themselves tell us there was intense social or political conflict. Throw in the constant pressure of disease in a crowded city, and the picture becomes terrifyingly clear. It wasn't just one thing that brought down Cahokia. It was everything hitting all at once. So, after all that, what happened to the people who built this incredible city? What is their final legacy? You know, it's so easy to talk about lost civilizations or people who've vanished. But the truth is, people rarely just disappear. While the great, centralized city of Cahokia faded away, its people, their knowledge, and their culture, they carried on. The exact path they took, which specific tribes they became, those are still questions being debated by archaeologists and, more importantly, by the descendant communities themselves. But the people of Cahokia moved on, they adapted, and their descendants are among the many vibrant Native American communities that thrive across the United States today. The city was just one chapter in their story, not the end of the book. The story of Cahokia is definitive proof that a complex, monumental, and incredibly sophisticated history exists right here, under our feet, a history that came long before the one we're usually taught. And it leaves us with one final, tantalizing question. What else is out there, just waiting for us to find it?